most trustless name in news.
The Bitcoin ETF created a hype cycle for the crypto markets like never before. But can the hype continue? Well, the ETF spotlight is now on Ethereum for the 23rd of May. Ethereum is the car in the race that could get the market hype going once again. But is this straight up hopium? Many people think so, as a rejection they think is coming. So what are the actual chances of approval or rejection? Well, you know, we did the digging and uncovered those chances. Because it's time for Chico Crypto. Yeah, there is no doubt the Bitcoin ETF had a big effect on the crypto markets. January 10th is when the SEC approved the spot Bitcoin ETFs. And the price of Bitcoin since those approvals went wild, surging from 42K all the way up to a peak of over 73K by March 13th, a surge of 74% in just 2 months, making Bitcoin for the first time in history to cross its previous all-time high before the halving. Could a hype cycle like that happen again? A hype cycle that could push Bitcoin above 100K? Well, yeah, it's possible because Ethereum has ETF deadlines on the horizon for next month. As we can see from the list of Ethereum ETFs with applications to the SEC, there are 3 with a final deadline towards the end of May. There is the Van Eck Ethereum ETF and ARK21 Shares Ethereum ETF with deadlines on May 23rd. And then there is the DEX Nasdaq Ethereum ETF with a deadline the next week, May 30th. So just from reading these deadlines, why do people think there would be an approval? Well, many of these same companies filed for Bitcoin ETFs, and those were all passed on the first final deadline. As we can see, ARK21 Shares Bitcoin ETF was the only ETF with a deadline January 10th. Others had later deadlines that came in March, but all of them were passed on January 10th. So it would make sense the SEC is going to do the same thing they did with Bitcoin, pass all of the Ethereum ETFs before the first final deadline. Then why is the chance of an approval so low? From the prediction market Polymarkets, the overall sentiment is that there's only an 11% chance that the Ethereum ETF gets approved by the end of May. Yikes, but it's not only the people betting on prediction markets where there is a low chance. From the world of ETF analysts, we see a similar thing. Eric Balchunas, ETF analyst for Bloomberg, tweeted this regarding the probability. Regarding ETH ETF approval, we are holding the line at 25% odds. Although, to be honest, it is a very pessimistic 25%. The lack of engagement seems to be purposeful versus procrastination. No positive signs orient anywhere you look. Personally, I hope they do approve it, but it just ain't looking good. Only a 25% chance? There is no engagement from the SEC? What does this mean? Well, this is what the Van Eck CEO had to say about the Ethereum ETFs to CNBC April 9th. Jean Van Eck said, "We were the first to file as well for Ethereum in the US, and we and ARK Invest CEO Cathie Wood are kind of the first in line for May, I guess, to probably be rejected." The way the legal process goes is the regulators will give you comments on your application. And that happened for weeks and weeks before the Bitcoin ETFs. And right now, pins are dropping as far as Ethereum is concerned. Yes, before the Bitcoin ETFs, there was engagement from the SEC. Potential ETF issuers were going back and forth with the regulatory body, making adjustments and amendments to their applications. This has not been happening this time around with ETH. Although this is not everyone's consensus, Craig Salm, the chief legal officer of Grayscale, who also has an ETF application in with the SEC, said this on X. Recently, there's been a lot of chatter about spot Ethereum ETFs. I personally am not deterred by it and believe the ETFs should be approved. But right now I want to talk about how I think perceived lack of SEC engagement should be viewed at this point. In the final months leading up to the Bitcoin ETF approval, Grayscale and others received positive and constructive engagement from the SEC. We had thoughtful conversations and discussed the finer details of creation and redemption procedures, cash first in kind, APs, LPs, custody, etc. All of these issues were figured out, and they are identical when comparing spot Bitcoin to Ethereum ETFs. The only difference is rather than the ETF holding Bitcoin, it holds Ether. So in many ways, the SEC already has engaged, and issuers simply have less to engage on this time. All the ironing, all those kinks have been worked out. There was a blueprint created for the Bitcoin ETF, and all these ETF issuers had to do was copy and paste that blueprint for Ether. There is no reason for the back and forth because their applications are already worked out. The only thing that could hold Ethereum back for a disapproval is the fact that it might be considered a security by the SEC. If you didn't know, the SEC back in March decided to go after Ethereum. From this CoinDesk article titled, "The United States Security and Exchange Commission has reportedly issued several subpoenas to companies related to attempts to label Ether as a security," it says. According to a March 20th Fortune report, an investigation by the SEC into the Ethereum Foundation could give the commission regulatory coverage to define ETH as a security. The foundation suggested via GitHub that it may be under investigation from a state authority. Several US-based companies reportedly received subpoenas from the SEC, requesting they provide documents and financial records related to dealings with the Ethereum Foundation. According to people familiar with the matter, the commission launched a campaign to classify ETH as a security following the blockchain's transition from proof of work to proof of stake in 2022. But if Gary Gensler and the SEC are going to go after Ethereum for the potential of it being a security, they are going to lose. Here is Gary declaring Ethereum as a non-security in 2018.
Over 70% of the crypto market is Bitcoin, Ether, Litecoin, Bitcoin Cash. Why did I name those four? They're not securities.
He even has Congress testimony that Ethereum is a non-security. He said this in 2018 to the government, the House of Representatives, in a letter. He said, currently nearly 70% of the crypto market's $250 billion total capitalization is represented by the 5 cryptocurrencies which have either been designated by the SEC as not securities: Bitcoin and Ether. The CFTC has general anti-fraud and anti-manipulation authorities with regard to spot transactions in these crypto cash commodities, such as Bitcoin or Ether. Gary called them crypto cash commodities that the CFTC has jurisdiction over. So let's just hear what Gary had to say after the Bitcoin ETF was approved regarding other ETFs.
Does the court decision around Bitcoin to you act as a precedent on other currencies?
I look at what we did this week as it's cabined to one non-security commodity called Bitcoin. Like we've had gold, spot, exchange-traded products, and silver exchange-traded products in the past and approved in the past, this is cabined just to that one non-security commodity token.
This time he called them non-security commodities, aka crypto cash commodities. He is saying non-security commodities have a clear path to an ETF, especially if the CFTC has jurisdiction over them, which if they are non-security commodities, they do. Well, guess who just said last month they have jurisdiction over Ethereum, and it's a commodity. The CFTC. Chairman Rostin Binham said this.
I've made the argument that Ether is a commodity. It's been listed on CFTC exchanges for quite some time. And for that reason, it creates a very direct jurisdictional hook for us to police, obviously, the derivatives market, but also the underlying market as well.
He then made his point very, very clear. It's a commodity, as they could face legal repercussions if they allowed a futures product and it was a security. They have a legal defense.
So there's no doubt in my mind, and having known this and been at the commission when Ether futures were listed, that both the exchange and the commission thought very deeply and thoughtfully about what is the product and does it fall within the regime, the commodity regime, or the security regime. We would not have allowed the product, in this case the Ether futures product, to be listed on a CFTC exchange if we did not feel strongly that it was a commodity asset, because we have litigation risk, we have agency credibility risk if we do something like that without serious legal defense or defenses to sort of support our argument that that asset is a commodity.
Yep, the CFTC has extensive legal defense to say Ethereum is a commodity. Now, let me tell you guys, I have a feeling soon the SEC is going to officially label Ethereum as a commodity before the ETF deadline, giving the green light to the Ethereum ETF. Now, why? Well, just last month, Prometheum was the first and only company to secure a special purpose broker-dealer license from the SEC, and they announced they would be custodying Ethereum first. From this Blockworks article on this, it says, Benham was referring to Prometheum's recent announcement that it would launch its custody service with Ether as its first asset. The announcement raised eyebrows across the crypto industry as onlookers speculated whether the news might force the SEC to make a more direct position on Ether's status as a security or commodity. But then you got to take a look at this. Congress writing a letter directly to Gary Gensler, March 26, asking him to be direct. Is Ethereum a security or a commodity due to Prometheum's actions? They say in the letter, for the reasons stated above, please respond in writing to the following. And one of those questions from Congress is ETH a digital asset security? It's been a month since this letter, and I believe Gary is being forced to answer the question, and it will come soon. He isn't going to declare ETH as a security, but a commodity, because he will lose in court if he does. And even Larry Fink of Blackrock, who has an ETF Ether application, agrees with me.
Talk about Ether. The SEC, there's lots of noise about them declaring Ether a security, which would take it out of the Bitcoin category as a commodity. How does that translate into an ETF?
I don't think that, look, and I really can't talk about it, but I don't think that designation is going to be that deterious to.
Oh, really? So
Yep, even with all the hoopla, Larry believes the ETH ETF is coming. Cheers. I'll see you next time.
The most trustless name in news.